This is Between the Uprights.
Football is life. The rest is just details.
Here are your hosts, Joe, Matt, and Chris.
Welcome into Between the Uprights. I'm Joe, that's Matt. Chris couldn't be with us here today, but our thoughts go out to her. She's recovering from an illness. Hope to have her back really soon. But that doesn't mean we're not going to be giving you all of that great football breakdown that you come to Between the Uprights for. But before we get into that, please hit that like and subscribe button. It would mean a lot to us here at Between the Uprights if you could do that. So go ahead and do that right now for me before we get into all this. We'd greatly appreciate it. Now, never have I seen a wide receiver be the most targeted wide receiver on a team, have 0 catches, drop the ball in multiple clutch situations in a game-winning situations, games where like they could have continued to drive, got down the field and tie it up, and then go into the locker room and have the audacity, the gall, to look the media in the face and go, I need to be getting more targets in more games earlier on, more of the time, all the shit that Calvin Ridley said is absolutely mind-boggling. This guy leads the team in targets. All right? Leads the teams in targets. The only person on this team with a worse drop percentage than Calvin Ridley is Treylon Burks. And we already know Burks' is ass, all right? That's why they went out and got D-Hop, all right? And there are Titans fans in the comments on some of our other videos begging for Calvin Ridley to be traded because of how bad he has been. He was signed as to be their number 1 wide receiver. He was brought in because of what he did in Jacksonville. And now I don't even know if he's got any trade value because he literally was like, he couldn't hold on to anything. It was bad. Like he would go in, like there was a throw. Will Levis had him in a window between 2 zone defenders. All really had to do was sit down, ran right through it, dropped the ball. It was bad. It was just perfect. I watched the replay. It was, to me, should have been Calvin Ridley coming in there, seeing that, sitting down, catching that ball and turning upfield. It would have been a first down. Dropped it. Came back to him again. I will agree with Calvin Ridley. He didn't get a lot of targets in the first half. But when the game was on the line, when your star player's supposed to shine, he dropped the ball multiple times. He was a blemish, a dark spot. A cloud hung over him every time the ball was thrown his way. You were targeted more than anyone else in this game. 0 catches. In fact, you had 4 drops. You have the most drops on this team. Most targets, most drops, you're not leading in yards. That says something. In fact, I looked it up the other day. I'm pretty sure that he has less catches than other people who have less targets. In fact, I'm pretty sure he doesn't even have double-digit receptions. The guy is the only guy on the team to be targeted over 25 times and not catch at least 10 passes. No one else on the team has been targeted that much. So you can't go into the media and complain about targets and then not catch a fucking football. Like what are we doing here, Matt? Like this is some next level diva shit, and it's from a guy who is literally made poor decision after poor decision and bad. This is the worst thing that he could have done from any standpoint, because there's no one in that locker room who wants to, and the head coach agreed with him. Yeah. The head coach came out and agreed. Oh my God. I couldn't believe it. He's like, oh, he's right. We got to get him involved a little early on. Did you watch the tape? Or are you just talking out your ass at the podium because your diva punk ass wide receiver made some comments? Because that's what it sounds like. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but this is not a good look for Calvin Ridley or the Tennessee Titans.
No, it's a terrible look for both. I mean, I'll get to it. I do agree with Ridley on some things, but listen, I'm just a baseball coach. I'm a random internet podcast dude. All right. Most people don't know who I am. Most people don't know who you are. We're just random dudes who like football and talk about football. All right. I'm not normally one to say this, and I would never normally say this to someone like Calvin Ridley, who's a $90 million professional athlete and a former All-Pro. You got to shut up, dude. Just shut up. Like, I don't understand it. Like, you literally just signed this offseason a 4-year contract to make $92 million with the Tennessee Titans this offseason. First thing there, you're making 23 M's a year. We do not want to hear the excuses, okay? Second of all, you chose to sign with the Tennessee Titans, who were going with a second-year quarterback who, and after year one, a lot of people thought sucked, and year two has confirmed does suck in Will Levis, and a rookie head coach who obviously had no head coaching experience prior. So no one outside of the Titans locker room and fan base thought this offense was going to be good with or without you, and you literally chose to sign there, okay? You saw that situation from Jacksonville last year as well, your interdivision rival, the Jaguars and the Lions, and last year you talked about he got signed off of Jacksonville. He was expected to produce much better there last year than he actually did with the Jags. He had a really disappointing year, in my opinion, last year with the Jags, and then he still got paid $100 million, but again, you chose to go to Tennessee. So to start by blaming the situation that you put yourself in is something that I cannot get down with. Again, I get it a little bit from Ridley's perspective. You're a competitor, okay? You're allowed to be frustrated, and you should 100% be frustrated considering what the situation is and has become. But you cannot say it in the media. Scream it in the locker room, scream it in a team meeting or in a personnel meet or in a personal meeting with Brian Callahan, the head coach, okay? But not in the media. And again, you have to take more accountability. He did say it in kind of in the midst of that rant that he was like, "Oh, I sucked, I have to be better." But it was more of like an afterthought. If you actually listen to the interview, the main thing was blaming everyone else, and I cannot get down with that. So listen, it's a terrible look. And now it's a distraction for a bad team that doesn't need any distractions right now. Like, they're already really, really bad, and you're already adding another distraction on top of it. So it's a terrible look for Ridley, 100%. It's an awful look for Calvin Ridley and for the whole Titans organization.
Yeah, I just, and I don't understand. Like, it's right. When he was sitting there, he was like, he went and attacked everybody and then realized almost like mid-sentence that he was fucking up and was like, "Oh, but yeah, I need to be better. I need to."
But then he went right back to attacking him again.
Oh yeah, and then
like,
he was like, it was like
yeah.
he had to say, he was like, "Oh no, man, I'm in the wrong here." No, fuck that. I'm $100 million wide receiver.
Yeah.
They're in the wrong.
Right.
like Jesus. And, I wouldn't even have anything to say about this realistically. I understand, wide receivers, they've always had this diva mantra. And when you have a number one, you want to get them involved. You want to get them more targets. You want that to happen. Right. And like you said, Will Levis has not been playing well. And so there's frustration to have there, right? There's something that needs to change, something that needs to happen. And, the head coach, I'm not agreeing with Brian Callahan agreeing with Calvin Ridley. Granted, you're the one who writes the scheme here. You're the one who does, your first 10 plays. If you want to get Calvin Ridley early targets, scheme your first 10 plays that way. Don't confirm what your diva wide receiver is saying in the fucking in your press conference, your post-game press conference. Don't do that. Go, "Well, we need to be better on all accounts, and he's our number one wide receiver, so we do need to give him the ball a little bit more." Something different. Don't just confirm that, that's what happens, but it's a team thing. You have to say. You can't say that shit as the head coach. This is bad on 2 points here. Brian Callahan for confirming what Calvin Ridley said, and Calvin Ridley for saying it to the media in the first place.
100%.
That being said, you're right. He knew what he was getting into when he signed with Tennessee. You saw it, right? Like, granted, Tony Pollard, all the sorts of things like that. You knew the offensive line had not performed well. You knew that Will Levis had, questions about how good of a quarterback he actually was. You knew that, you were signed to this team that had been in the cellar of the AFC South for a very long time. You could have went a plethora of other places. The New England Patriots just drafted Drake May, and he made Kayshon Boutte and Pop Douglas look like all pros in his first game in week 6. You could have been on that offense. They wanted you to go to New England. You chose Tennessee to play with Will Levis. Now, granted, your first 5 weeks in New England probably would have went a little similar to the first 5 weeks in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. No one's not saying that. But when you look at the fact you signed a 4-year contract worth $92 million, you're in Tennessee for 4 years. Your best hope is that Tennessee sucks so fucking bad they win the Arch Manning sweepstakes. All right, that's the only quarterback that you're going to be able to play with, and that's going to happen 2 years later, and you're going to be in your early 30s at that point, bud. So that's where you're at right now. You chose this, and the worst part is he's getting paid too much to trade him. You can't send him anywhere, and nobody wants him. The only place that maybe you could call would be like, "Hey, Kansas City, we'll eat 50% of his salary. Give us a 3rd round draft pick." And they'll be like, "How about you eat 80% of his salary, similar to what the Browns did with Amari Cooper, and we'll give you a 6th round draft pick."
Right. It was funny. I was looking up Calvin Ridley stuff, obviously just prepping for this today, and it was like the Broncos should trade for Calvin Ridley, and I was like, why? Like, I don't that doesn't make any sense. But kind of to your point, I mean, listen, and to Ridley's point too. I mean, the situation is bad. I mean, there's no denying that the situation in Tennessee is bad. And I was kind of thinking about something that Tom Brady said. He's been post retirement. He's dropped a lot of gems, but something that he talked about is like, basically, hey, you got a number one receiver, get him involved early, whether it's like a hitch or a bubble or like just something quick to get him involved and get him in rhythm. And that's something that the Titans haven't been doing with Calvin Ridley, obviously. So again, that has something to do with Ridley, but that's a lot on Brian Callahan as the head coach and the play caller of that team. And listen, you go back and watch the game on Sunday. You were there, Joe. They did that with DeAndre Hopkins. They did that with Traylon Burks, and they did that with Tyler Boyd too early in the game. So yeah, you can do that for Calvin Ridley too. It's not like it's not like you couldn't have thrown a bubble to Calvin Ridley at some point, So again, however, how you call the plays and get your receivers in rhythm when you have one of the, I'll be generous, 5 worst quarterbacks in football is tough. It's hard to get your receivers in rhythm when Will Levis is missing the receivers by 5 yards, So it's like it's hard to do that. Will Levis is terrible. He's literally a meme. Like even if you I was gonna say even if you have the privilege to watch him, but whenever you watch him, it's more of a burden watching a Titans game with Will Levis. But listen, he's in his second
another
year.
one in November.
Geez.
The Patriots are in town. I have to go.
Okay, well, yeah, the Patriots are in town. You got to go. But listen, Levis, I get it. He's in his second year. He has some arm talent, but he's not a good quarterback. You can just see it with certain guys. He doesn't have the football IQ. He doesn't have the touch. He just doesn't have certain things that it requires to be a good NFL quarterback. So I think Levis is mostly to blame for their offensive struggles. The only touchdowns they scored in the game on Sunday came off a Flacco pick, and it was on a short field. And then Tony Pollard ran that 30-yard touchdown on a 3rd and 19 draw play. So the offense is bad, despite having a lot of notable names on there. But even with all that considered, like all that I just said that are like reasons that like Calvin Ridley should be pissed, I'm still not cool with you having an F-word laden tirade in the media about it in a post-game interview. You got to be better than that, and you got to be more professional than that as a $90 million receiver, someone who's probably looked at as one of the leaders on the team. So yeah, it's all bad for Calvin Ridley and the Titans right now. And again, this is going to be a top 5. You're going to be drafting top 5 in the draft, and it's just all bad. It's not good for Tennessee right now.
This has been Between the Uprights. Football is life. The rest is just details.